It's almost like after 30 years, he's become an overnight sensation because it feels like the rest of America is now experiencing Chris Mad Dog Russo because he's on First Take with Stephen A. Smith. Chris has been doing this for a long, long time, battling everybody. Mad Dog Unleashed on Sirius XM, that's channel 82, host of High Heat on Major League Baseball Network. Congrats, Chris, on this overnight success.
Out of nowhere, Danny, you know how much I love coming on. How you doing, pal? Okay?
I'm good. You argue for a living, but when you go on First Take, how much say do you have in those topics that you're going to be exploring?
More than I thought. We did a little baseball a couple weeks ago. I suggested maybe something on Krzyzewski yesterday because obviously, the Duke game on Saturday and the fact they play today at noon. So I thought you had to do a little college basketball. I'm careful. It's Stevie's show. So, I'm a new guy on the block. I don't want to make any waves. I thought maybe you had to do something on Calvin Ridley, with the gambling thing with the 1 year. They agreed on that anyway. But, I think, I will be gentle, but I'll suggest, what the hell? I've been doing this for a long time. And as you said, it's almost like I've been debating my whole life. Half the time on Sirius, I'm talking to myself for 3 hours. So as a result, I come up with topics. I did it with Mike for 19 years. I've been on all these. I've been on with your show a million times. You and I have had plenty of debates going back to your days at SportsCenter. So it's almost like I've been trained to do this. So I'm usually fairly comfortable. I think the two sports I'm a little shaky with right now, if there was a big boxing match, Steve's great with that. I'd have a little work to do. And NBA regular season, especially right now where it's sort of in and out of the clouds when I'm more into the college, maybe it can be a little spotty, but, I'll adapt the way I have to adapt. But I've had some say in what I think in a 2-hour thing. That's a long time, 2 hours to talk. So I've had a little say.
The art of winning an argument. What is your art of winning an argument?
Well, in the old days with Mike, it was a case of, out screaming him and maybe figuring out a way to get, sort of wearing him down, the battle of attrition. And eventually Mike would just throw up the white flag. You know what? I'm not going to win this one. The hell with it. All right, you win. In this particular situation where you don't want to come across as a loudmouth bully, as you said, who in America knows who Chris Russo is. So you have to be a little more gentle. And again, I still consider myself almost as a guest, more so as a semi-co-host. So I don't want to overstep my bounds. But the great thing about him, I don't know if you know him that well, Dan, I don't know what your relationship, but the great thing about him is he doesn't care who gets the credit as long as the show is good. A lot of guys wouldn't do it that way. In my show, I've been doing it for 10 years. You're a guest and you're going to follow my lead. He doesn't seem to have that attitude. So as a result, if I want to scream and yell about where Curry is with Bird, I want to scream and yell about where Wilson is with Rodgers. At least in the first couple of appearances, he's let me do that. So I think I've learned in my life not to go too crazy because you can win an argument and still look bad.
Yeah.
You can, all right, you win, but it doesn't come across well. And you also want to be likable. Right? You're on TV, you're on radio. There's got to be a little likability factor. So you want to be able to get your point across. Great if you win, but have some fun doing it. And you want that to come across. So if you have to lose an argument for the sake of losing it because it's good TV or good radio, I think I didn't know this 15 years ago. I probably know that now.
He's Mad Dog Russo. By the way, he's got a new series of episodes on his Digging Up the Past podcast, debuts this month. You focus on the history of the NCAA tournament. First episode is Magic Bird 1979 title game, and you can get that on the Sirius XM app. What's the one thing that you would want the audience to take away from this that maybe you discovered on Bird Magic 1979?
Yeah, it's this is going to be all about the 80s. We did the first 40 years last year. So this is the second part. We're going to break it down into 5 parts. The switch from NBC to CBS, the rise of the Big East, classic games, and the Bird Magic thing. Now, obviously, Magic and Bird, you're not going to get them. So Yeah, I did the interviews. That Larry Brown was at the games. I did Packer. I did Bob Ryan. I think the one thing that I didn't realize, Ryan insisted, and he was there, that Bird was hurt, that he hurt his wrist sometime in the course late in that year and didn't feel right that night. Now, he shot 7 for 21 and was not a factor in the game. As you know, Michigan State, where you and I are old enough to know this, Michigan State was the much better team, and Bird was not 100%. That's what Ryan said emphatically. Packer, his theme is what you and I have always thought about too. At least, nobody really quite knew, watching those two players, how great they were going to be in the NBA. Magic slow, couldn't shoot. Bird, slow, not a great defender. How would his game translate? And Packer, on 2 or 3 cuts in that episode, which is 40 minutes long, in 2 or 3 cuts said, none of us thought that the two of them were going to be great NBA players, including Al McGuire. So I think those two little tidbits are interesting. And remember too, Danny, you remember this. I did too, because I was 18. I was in college. I was a freshman. Bird played 2 great games that Indiana State did before that championship game. They beat Moncrief and Arkansas in the regional final. That was the year after Arkansas got to the Final Four, but Ron Brewer and Marvin Delph had graduated, so only Moncrief was left. They won by a basket, and Moncrief and Bird were great, as you know. And then in the semifinals, they beat Aguirre from DePaul, and Aguirre was great, Ray Meyer, and that game was by a basket. So they had played 2 unbelievable games, and then they played this terrible game in the final. So I thought that was interesting. A lot of interesting little tidbits. You and I will remember it because you and I are old enough. I mean, probably a little younger than me, but we're about the same age. So you're a good player as it was. You remember all these games. But even I picked up on something. That's why these podcasts are good, because you do all these interviews with older guys who are still sharp as a tack, who give you good information. I'll give you one that you'll find fascinating. You ready for this? I did Boeheim on the Big East. I talked to him, and on his game that he lost to Indiana. In 87, when they lost Indiana, the chaperone who was in charge of getting Syracuse to and from New Orleans was crushed that they lost to Indiana. When they went back there in 2003 in New Orleans, Boeheim gets on the bus with the chaperone, and the first thing he says, let's win this championship. It was the same chaperone from 1986. Things like that you pick up that are interesting,
If Bird or Magic would be better in today's NBA, which one?
You can answer that probably better than I can. I think Bird would be great. I think both would be great. I mean, Magic, you have to wonder a little bit about his quickness, his 3-point shooting. If the game's different, he was a wonderful and he wasn't unbelievably fast. So and his 3-point shooting. Bird was a great 3-point shooter. So I think Bird might be a little better organized today than Magic would be, because Bird was they both were great passers, but Bird was a better shooter than Magic and a better 3-point shooter and everything else. So maybe Bird's game translates, but I think if you're an all-time great, you're an all-time great. And I think both of them would be great today. And I made the point with Stephen A. last week, and I don't know if you saw it or heard about it, and you might disagree or not, and I'm not arguing body of work, but if you ask me in the peak of their career, in a 7-game series against an equal team, who I'd rather have, Bird or LeBron, I might take Bird. That's how good he was.
I think Larry, if he had stayed healthy, we always love to have that caveat, but it wasn't till LeBron was around 30 when I said he's a better basketball player than Larry. Because there was a season where Larry averaged pretty close to a triple-double, and I think it was when he was 29 or so. And, it was 39-8 for Larry. And Larry wasn't about numbers. Everybody's about numbers now. If you're 39-8, you're going to go, I'm going to average a triple-double. Bird, he didn't calculate games that way. But
right.
If you said it's one game, I think, Chris, then it's an interesting argument.
But I said series. I said series. On a 7-game
okay,
series.
so one game, would that be any different? Would you take Bird over LeBron? One game must win.
I think he's a better shooter. He's a better shooter than LeBron is, and he's a better outside, and he's a better free throw shooter. And here's the thing that I argued, and you would remember it well, and I think there's something to it. I've seen LeBron. He was bad against Dallas the year they lost.
Yeah.
He played terribly in that series. You've been around forever. You ever see Bird when he was healthy? You ever see Bird in a big series lay an egg?
I saw him have a bad shooting performance.
He had the bad game against the Lakers the year that Magic's baby hook.
Yeah, because I was at that game, and Bird had a chance at the end. He had
a wide open three.
Yeah,
he had a wide open three.
James,
you were at that game?
James, yeah, I was there.
Wow, I didn't know that. You were at that game, Game 5 in the 87. Where were you sitting that night?
I was way up.
That was before sport. Were you doing Sports Center at the time?
I was at CNN.
Wow, you were at that game. That's one of the all-time great games, the Magic baby hook.
Yes.
Good for you.
Yes.
Wow.
But, I was fortunate to have been around the NBA in the early – the only person I didn't see in person was Bill Russell. Saul Wilt, Maravich, all of those great teams came into Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Royals. So I got a chance to see great players. So when people say, well, let's argue this, I at least have a reference point.
So you saw Oscar.
Yes.
You're old enough to have seen Oscar as a Royal.
Yeah.
Before he went to Milwaukee.
Yes. We didn't realize how great he was because the Royals weren't any good. But he did this every night where he'd give you 25, 26 a game, great free throw shooter, rebounder. But we also knew of him at the University of Cincinnati. So, a lot of times we see somebody for the first time, we go, oh, my God, did you see that guy? Well, we had seen Oscar for, 6-7 years before he emerged on the scene in Milwaukee when he won an NBA championship. But
the missing ingredient. That's right. You grew up in Cincinnati, so you saw all those Royal teams. Are you old enough? Were you at the game and when Cousy put himself in and they blew that 5-point lead
against the Knicks? No, I was not. But that was tough.
That said, that made the Knicks break the record for consecutive wins that game.
Yeah.
Was it 18 or 19 in a row?
18, I think, in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which the Lakers obliterated, 2 or 3 years later. But, tell them, Danny, Cousy put himself in a game with a 5-point lead. What was it, 30 seconds left or something crazy like that? And they lost.
I know.
Something like that.
It
right?
was sad when you saw it because that's where somebody doesn't realize they shouldn't be in the game. And Cousy was a player coach, and he put himself in the game, and I think had a couple of turnovers there. They ended up losing. Before I
6 years after he retired, too. 6 years after.
If you were going to arbitrate baseball and its lockout, what's the solution here, Chris?
I think they're going to get something done. You can't sit there and tell me this international draft thing with the tie-in. That's not going to. I think that whether it's today, tomorrow, I do think they're going to get something done. The owners did listen, I know everybody wants to kill the owners, so I'll go the other way. I mean, think about what the owners have given to players here, Danny. You've been following this forever. They went minimum salary went up to $700,000 from $570,000, and then the deal goes to $770,000. They took about the free agent compensation situation. The luxury tax went from $208 to $230 million. From the last agreement last year into this year at $230. They they got away the market manipulation, the Chris Bryant nonsense that we saw at the Cubs when he got sent down to the minor leagues and for service time. They only took 12 postseason teams when they wanted 14. And here's the big one. They had never given a nickel into this. They put $40 million into the salary arbitration thing for 1 and 2 year players. So a guy like Corbin Burns, who won a Cy Young, would not be eligible for a lot of money. Now, in subsequent years, if they signed off this, they'd have $40 million to figure out how to use if you're part of the Players Association. So to me, if I'm a player, I say, hold on now. We got minimum salary. We got CBT. We got only the amount of playoff teams we wanted. We got no draft pick compensation. We got salaries I'm an idiot. Let's go. I'm signing the contract. But, they came up with this international jet thing. I think this will get settled here shortly. And I mentioned this yesterday, and you probably agree. Can you imagine if on April 15th, on the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson, they're not playing in Major League ballparks in this day and age?
I know.
Think about that, Dan.
I know.
They have to play. They got to figure this out. That's the biggest embarrassment in the world. A week before the NFL draft, and they're on a lockout / strike when Jackie Robinson 75 years ago played first base for the Dodgers against the Boston Braves, and they're not playing baseball. That you're not going to win. You're dead. You're finished in this day and age. So I think they're going to get something done.
Always great to talk to you. Congrats on the
You're
success
the best,
there
Danny.
at First Take. Thank you, buddy. That's Mad Dog Russo. You can see him on First Take every Wednesday with Stephen A. Smith. And also he has a new series of episodes for his podcast, Digging Up the Past, available SiriusXM app.